Hi, I'm Norm Kern, and welcome to Access MC, Access to Motorcycling. This time, we're going to change the tires on a bike to show you what's involved with changing a motorcycle tire. I have with me my friend Jeff, who was nice enough to bring his bike over, which just happens to need a couple of tires. So, without further ado, let's get started. The first thing we have to do is take off the rear wheel. This is the one we're going to change first. And we put the bike on a lift, and we put tie downs on the front to hold it steady, and we put a prop underneath the engine so that the back wheel is off of the ground. Now, at home, you don't really need to use a lift, but we used one here to get the bike up off the floor so that you could see what we were doing a little bit better. Now, wheels on motorcycles come off different ways, and on this one we have an axle which has a nut over here on this side, and there's a cotter key over here, or not a cotter, cotter pin over here, which keeps the axle from coming loose and coming out. So we have to remove that cotter pin and unscrew the axle, and once it comes out, we have to watch to see where the spacers are that keep everything centered up. And then when we get that wheel off, we'll see that on this particular bike, the chain and sprocket and brake drum all stay on the swing arm of the motorcycle. So let's get in here, and first thing we need to do is take the cotter pin out. We do that by straightening it out. Now what we want to do here, since this one's a little stubborn, we can put the needle nose pliers in through the loop on the end, then strike it with a hammer and we can get it right out. Now we've got the cotter pin out, we can take the axle off. We do that by removing this nut here, which is actually the end of the axle. You can see the spacers starting to turn. Okay? And Jeff's been good to me. He greased his axle so that it would be able to come out later without being all rusted together. Appreciate that. Okay, we take the spacer out, and then we can pull the wheel over just like that, and it drops off of the coupling and it comes out. Okay? Now we check the wheel bearings. That one is a little bit gritty feeling, so we'll probably replace those. This one on the other side feels a little bit better, but not too much. So before we put this back on, we're going to replace the wheel bearings. So let's go over here and change the tire. Now this wheel, it doesn't really make much difference whether you put it on one side or the other. The tire is against the concrete both ways. So the first thing we need to do is we need to let the air out of the tire. First thing we're going to have to do is let the air out of the tire, and the easiest way to do that is to take the valve core out. So we unscrew the cap. The cap here doesn't really seal air or anything. It mostly keeps dirt out so that when we want to remove the valve, it's not all clogged with dirt. I've got a little valve core removal tool. I stick that in here and start unscrewing the valve. You can hear the air escaping. Dirt bike tires don't carry real high air pressure. But they still have some in there. I'm not quite ready yet. Come out. Yeah, there we go. This valve doesn't want to come out.
It's like 3 or 4 inches long.
It is? It must be. Huh?
You think?
Oh. It's unscrewed all the way. It's just hung up on the threads somehow. So let's grab it with the needle nose. There we go. Pull that out. Now, we need a 12 millimeter wrench because we have to take this nut off to get the inner tube loose. And then on the other side, which we'll show you in a moment, there's a rim lock. All right. We've got a 12 millimeter wrench, and we get on there. Most of these wrenches have what they call a box end and an open end. And of course the box end grips the bolt or nut all the way around. So if you have room, it's always better to use the box end. Okay, I've got that out. And see, I can push that down now. I'll turn this around so that you can see. There's another threaded piece here. Doesn't have a valve in it. That's called a rim lock. And what that does is it clamps the tire to the rim so that if the tire loses air pressure, it won't slip on the rim, and that keeps everything together. Unfortunately, as you will see, that makes the tire harder to change. So the first thing we're going to do, and we're not going to remove this all the way, we're just going to back the bolt way off. Run that out. Like that. Okay. Now rim locks are usually pretty tight. This is a good trick if we can get it to work. Let's see.
You need any help there, Linda?
Well, now wait a minute. We can, if we turn the tire over, there's more room in the spokes, and we can get this piece of wood down here. And then we can hit. There we go. Now our rim lock is loose. Okay? The next thing we need to do is what's called breaking the bead. With the tire laying down, we stand on the tire about like this and rock back and forth. That's got quite a bit of dirt in it. And you can see the tires moving away from the rim as we move around it. Okay. Now the tire is separated from the rim. We have to use tire tools. Need a couple of tire tools to do this job. And the trick is we want to start working. We want to start taking things over the edge of the rim. And the only way that we can do that is if the tire on the other side is pushed down. You can see how the center of the rim is bowed in. It's what they call a drop center rim. We can push the tire down into that drop center area and then pry it up on the other side and get it off. The tire valve and the rim lock prevent us from doing that with the tire. So we want the biggest portion of the rim that we can push down to be the part where we push down, and the smaller part that's left to be the part where we start to pry up. So I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to kneel with my knees to push the tire down, because this tire is pretty stiff. And I'm going to get it down just a little bit there. And I'm going to put that tool in there. You can see how it pulls it up. And then I'm going to take another tool and I'm going to put it maybe 6 inches away. I'm going to get it in there. There we go. And the thing I want you to see is what happens right here. The tire starts to come over the top. You see that? Now, we pull the tire tool out. We get over here and we find the place that's easiest to get the tool in. Then we do that. Okay? Now you notice these tire tools aren't very big, but if they were bigger, we'd have more leverage. But if we need a lot more leverage than what we've got here, then there's something else that we're not doing right. So these tire tools prevent you from using excessive force that could damage the tire. Notice that the Valve is right here. We're already going past the valve.
Right here.
Okay, that's one side, and we are ready to do the other side. Now, the next thing we need to do, of course, is break the bead, get it loose from the rim over on this side. So, we jump up and down. Now that we've broken that second bead, I think the next thing we want to do is take the inner tube out. So I'm going to pull the valve cord, push it down as far as it'll go, and then over around on the other side, I'm going to start pulling the inner tube out. I pull up on the tire, grab the inner tube, and work it around, going over to where the valve is last, and then pushing down on the valve to get it out of that hole. And then removing the inner tube. There we go. And once that inner tube's out, we'll need to rinse it off with water to get the dirt and grime off of it. And then we'll put the valve back in it and inflate it and see if it leaks. When it's out of the tire, when you inflate it, it expands, and any leak that's in there will be pretty obvious. Okay, now I'm going to pry up on the tire and get it over the rim lock. You can see, if you look real close, you can see the rim lock's in there. I've got the tire bead up over the top of that now. And we're going to stick another tire iron in there and then pry and pull on the rim and work it down. Okay. Now, push. I'm going to work the tire off of the rim. If I use a little more lubricant, it'll be a little easier. There we go. There it goes. There we go. Maybe one more time. Yep. And then we take that rim out. Okay. That tire is off. Now we're going to stick the hub straddling these two blocks of wood. We're going to put this in here and cock it. And then work it around. Got a good fire at that one time. You can hear that. Coming. Okay, we got a bearing out along with a spacer. Okay, once that one's out, it's pretty easy to get the other one out. Yeah. Just hit on it with the punch. And that one's out. So now we're ready for new bearings. I'm going to use a rubber mallet to set the new bearing in place.
Do you match them or anything to make sure they're the same as the one you took
Okay,
out?
notice this bearing. Zoom in here, Carol. Notice this bearing, the balls are exposed on one side and the other side is sealed. Okay? You want the sealed side to face outward. Always. Okay? So put it in the hole, get it started as far as you can, and then keep the mallet square and just gently work it in there.
That's
Okay.
gently.
Well, gently as opposed to using a steel hammer, yes. Okay, now, since the inside of the bearing is exposed, I think we're going to put some grease in there.
put some wheel bearing grease down in the hole. Now put the spacer back in. Take the new bearing. It's not quite in yet. Okay. I'm gonna wrap it with the steel hammer here. There we go. That'll set it. You never want to hit a bearing directly with a metal hammer. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do we patch an inner tube? Well, I don't really know because I never do. I figure, this is just a little bit of philosophy, I figure that a patched inner tube will never be as reliable as a new one, or an unpatched one. So now, we're going to put another tire on, and we just happen to have another tire. This one, like most of the modern tires, has an arrow on it, and we have to look for that arrow. Yeah, zoom in all the way on that. You see that little arrow there right next to my finger? It says rotation, and there's an arrow pointing that way, okay? So when that tire is on the back of the bike, it's going to be rotating this way. So I hold up the rim, and this is the side of the rim that's going to be on that side of the bike, and my directional arrow has told me if the tire is going to have to go on this way. Okay? We're going to kneel on it here to hold it down. And we're going to try if we can get it. When we get it past a certain critical point, then it'll go easier. Okay, we're getting there. Now, there we go. You heard it go. And the one side, well, not quite. Let's see, one more little place there. But, there. Okay, it is on now. The next thing we need to do is put the inner tube in. And we do that starting over at on the side where the hole is for the valve. And we tuck it in. Don't worry too much right now about it being wrinkled, because we have a way to deal with that. I want to get it in a little bit over here on the other side. Stuff that in there. I got the valve stem through the hole. Okay. The next thing we want to do is put the nut on it. So we get the nut on here. Okay, then we get the rest of the inner tube in. And we get it down over the edge of the rim, so it'll stay in there. Now, we got the inner tube tucked in. And we inflate the inner tube, and that gets all the wrinkles out and gets it centered all the way around. And we are now ready to get the other bead on, okay? Now, we want to start, right here is more than half of the tire, so we want to start over in here somewhere. The ways it is very easy to pinch an inner tube is when you're prying like this, if you go too far, the end of the tire tool will pinch the inner tube between itself and the inside of the rim. So if we never go more than about that far, we're safe. So we do that, we get that started there, we hold the tire down. Our lubricant's dried out quite a bit, but it still provides some help. Okay, I'm working with my knees, there we go. And I work it in here. I take about 2 or 3 inches at a time, seems to be a good figure. Now I can work some of that tire down with my knees. When I get around here to the rim lock, I'm going to push it up. And that way, it'll be out of the way so that the bead can come over and fall down in the place where it's supposed to go. And then, once that's happened, I can let go of the rim lock and it'll stay in its place pretty much. And I'll just tighten up the nut on it later. We are at the critical point. I'm going to put the tire tool in here. Let's take the smallest amount we can take. You can see it's getting closer and closer to the rim here. We're going to take one more bite right in there. And there it is. The tire's on, but the bead's not seated. So the next thing we need to do is inflate it. And you can see that there's usually a lip on the tire. And if you can see that lip all the way around, then that tire is seated. Okay? We can look at the other side, and lo and behold, it's seated too. Okay? Notice how it pushed the rim lock out. You see that? Right there? We'll take advantage of that and run that nut down there. Tighten him down. That's a sign of confidence. If you think that the tire will hold air, then it's worthwhile to have a tire gauge. Now we'll reinflate the tire. And we'll check it with the gauge and see how we're doing. Oh, we have more than 20 psi in there. We really don't need that much on a dirt bike tire. Street bike tires may need 35 to 45 pounds. But for the rear tire, but this has now got 17 in it. That's quite adequate for a dirt bike tire. Okay, we're ready for a wheel, Jeff. Can you hand me a wheel there? All right. We'll just roll that up there, and we have to line it up with it's got some pins over here. There we go. You saw how it moved over a little bit. And remember our spacer? Since we remember how it came out, we know just how it's supposed to go back in. And it fits right down in there. And we'll put the wheel on, or the axle on, and we push that through there. Take our wrench, get it started. There we go. Tighten that up good. job that you've just seen costs anywhere from $15 to $30 if you have it done. It's free if you're like Jeff and you're lucky enough to have a friend who will do it for you. But you can see from how much effort it is that if you have it done, they have probably earned their money. Most motorcycle shops have tire changing equipment where they don't have to use the hand tools, and it doesn't take them anywhere near as much time. The purpose of the show here was to show you what's involved if you do it yourself, to show you that it is possible to do it yourself, and also to show those that may not want to do it themselves that when they have it done, they're probably getting their money's worth. Well, that's all we have time for today. That's enough. So I guess I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Access to Motorcycling. I'm your host, Norm Kern, and I'll have my hands washed by the next show. Thank you. Bye-bye.